Hello everybody, what is up? Cobra Axis and Allies here. Today I'm going to be showing off my first painted army review for Global War 1914. Now, if you have seen in the past, I have made videos on the infantry that I've painted up, so this is going to go more into the actual units for my armies. And as you can see here, I've got my 1914 boxes, which are pretty much the same size as your Global War 1940 boxes, but I've made them out of wood. With all these little separators and everything inside, and I painted up a flag on them. This was an inspiration from G.I. Joe, another really cool YouTube channel out there. So yeah, let's get into the painted armies. So first up, again, we've got the British Army. So first, we've got the Air Force. Now, we've got these. Again, most of these units are 3D printed, so you can tell from these, like with the little, with the 3D material, that this is 3D printed, but I'm not a huge stickler about, when it's on the board, it's down there, you're not going to care that it's 3D printed or anything. It's not a model. But you can see we've got a bomber. Now, the problem with these original bombers I made was that I didn't put enough supports in the wing areas, so there's a little bit of cracking, and the wings are really well held in place in the center, but you can see towards the outside they are not, so that kind of sucked about the models in particular, but the fact that it still works, and you're going to be seeing it like that on a flight stand. You're not going to be looking at it like this, so it's not a huge deal, but getting a better shot at it. You can see Royal Flying Corps painted on the wing. Some nice detailing overall, and yeah, so that is the bomber. Next up, we've got the fighter, and this is a let's see if we can get to focus, a Sopwith Camel, and I used the Sopwith Camel for most of my allied armies just because it was an easy plane to 3D design. And it looks pretty good. I know the Americans, I forget the model, but they had a fighter that looked very similar, and the French Nieuport looked kind of similar. It had a slightly smaller bottom wing, but overall it looked very similar, and so that is the Sopwith Camel fighter that I'm using. And see, it's got some pretty nice detailing on the. You can see the wings, the structural supports are a lot bigger on these, so they work a lot better. You can see it's got the wheels and everything. So yeah, and all these planes are magnetized. I use magnetic paint. Basically, before I prime my planes, I put magnetic paint on the bottom of the wings, and then I prime it and everything. So basically, this will just stick right to a flight stand. It's very nice. And then lastly, for aircraft, for my Global War game, we have the Zeppelin. And yeah, so this I didn't design. This was just a model I got off of Thingiverse. It was designed by someone in the Axis and Allies Facebook page community. But yeah, a decent little sculpt. It did have a flight stand, but I ended up removing all my Zeppelin flight stands just because I liked my transparent ones. So yeah, a nice piece. Might get some use out of it. The British, with their economy, they can probably support buying some of these before they get going with bombers later war. So next up, we've got the British Navy. Now, the British Navy was definitely not that fun to paint, just because of the fact that, as you can see, we've got that dazzle camouflage, and it just took so long to do. Now, the white, the way I paint things is I always prime it with the base color that I'm going to use most. So you can see these RAF aircraft or RFC aircraft are mostly dark green, so I spray painted them dark green and then added the details later. So same with these white ships. I spray painted them white and then added the details later. This is a 3D printed battleship that I did not design. And again, I found it on Thingiverse. I forget the actual model, but it looks a little similar to Dreadnought. I know it's not Dreadnought though. But yeah. Next up, we've got Hood, and yes, Hood is, this one is in a World War II configuration because I just got an extra plastic piece, but it's cool to have a little bit of a diversity. You can see we've got a different dazzle pattern on this ship, and you know, plastic, it's going to have a lot better, nicer looking detail, not as kind of crappy as 3D prints will sometimes come out. And I'm trying to look for my last battleship model in here. Let's see if we can find it. Well, until we find it, we'll just go into a cruiser. This is again, I forget the model, but this is a British cruiser. And this is basically the cruiser sculpt I'm using for all my Allied cruisers. And yeah, so you can see on these, the 3D print came out a little less because it was before I really started getting into kind of getting things looking good and everything. But yeah, we got on these larger ships, I did put a British flag decal on it, and yeah. All right, just a little bit of sun coming in through the window, so I closed it. But lastly, for my battleships, we've got the HMS Warspite, or King George V class. Again, World War II model from Global 40. Was one of the Anzac ships, but again, you know, might as well use the pieces you have, so I decided to use it. And again, it's a nice looking ship, so it looks good, all painted up and everything. It was kind of funny, like, I love the sculpt of this so much. It's probably one of my favorite out-of-box battleship sculpts. So in Global 40, I've got them spread out, or between my Axis and Allies games, I've got them spread out really well. We've got I think I use them as my Anzac battleship, my British fast battleship, and as we can see now, my World War I British King George V battleship. So yeah, a very nice battleship, and so you can see we've got my nice spread of different types of battleships. Next up, we've got the Destroyer. Again, I did not design this one. Another just public model that came from Thingiverse. But let's see if we can get to focus. Yeah, just a kind of simple ship, you know. It's got the torpedo tubes and a couple guns on board. This was a Japanese destroyer, I think, a model for it, but a lot of torpedo boats and destroyers at the time looked very similar to this. So this is pretty much what I'm using for all of my 1914 armies. Here we have a river monitor. Again, a nice little, this is a design by me. It's got the huge battleship guns on this relatively small monitor. Yeah. And overall, a nice little ship. It doesn't look too great 3D printed, but, you know, what are you going to do about it? Alright. Okay, next up we've got, let's go with this, the pre-dreadnought. This is basically just supposed to, in the game, these represent, you know, old ironclads and pre-dreadnoughts that came before the kind of modernized battleships that we see today. So yeah, we've got, this is a pretty nice sculpt. Again, I didn't make this one, but overall nice. I like all the turrets on these. Like, with the pre-dreadnoughts, there was a lot of weird ones during the war, so I always tried for this game to get, like, just the weirdest looking ships to kind of diversify my armies. Let's see what else we've got in here. Here's a Japanese World War II destroyer, but I decided just because to use them in my World War I game, because I wanted like at least 10 destroyers for the British, just in case they really decided to go ham on like cheap ships. So, you know, just some spare destroyers, so I decided to throw them in anyways. Yeah, and I think that's just about it. I mean, oh yeah, we got the carrier. This is supposed to represent HMS, I don't remember, Furious, I think, the carrier conversion. Now, it is a Japanese World War II carrier, but, you know, and you're not going to see carriers, like, a lot at all in the game. They come pretty late, and they can only carry one plane, so they're not some wonderful weapon. They're not even a capital ship. They go down in one hit. So, yeah, but in terms of just, you know, in case you need it, you got it. So yeah, that's the British carrier. Yeah, heck, if you didn't want to even put carriers into the game, it really wouldn't hurt the game at all, really. So that is one thing to keep in mind. Lastly, we have the transport, just a World War II Liberty ship, because I didn't really want to get even more ships. I really tried. I mean, I pretty much spent hardly any money on this game in terms of the fact that plastic pieces came from original plastic pieces that I had on hand, and all these 3D prints I printed back in high school, so was no money out of my pocket. Same with these boxes, high school shop. So yeah, pretty good job on saving money for this game. So next up we got the land forces, or lastly. Now this is the British heavy tank, the Liberty tank, which was a joint US-British project vehicle. They never actually saw service, but they do look good in case you want to build them late war for those cool late war pushes into the German homeland. And yeah, they are a pretty nice looking tank. Now many of these tanks are not my design either. They came from a, there's another heavy tank. They came from another designer on Thingiverse. Here is my my Mark V medium tank, or during the war they would probably be classed still as heavy tanks, but yeah, again, a nice looking sculpt, nice detailing. This is one of the command variants where I put the flag on the roof, as they did during the war. Here we have a railway gun. This is modeled after not the Paris gun, but a French railroad gun. And you would think having a 3D printer, you would just design, special pieces for every single nation, but it definitely gets pretty time consuming, even when you're dedicated to it. So this French model railway gun, it looks good as a railway gun, so I decided to use this for all my armies. Here we have the British, really cool Rolls-Royce armored car. As a kid, I always loved these things. They were my favorite kind of military vehicle for a really long time, and still have some class. Like, I really like the fact that, it just looks like a nice little sports car with a turret on top of it. So, yeah, this is configured for RAF service because it's got the big roundel on top for clearing out airfields for the Royal Flying Corps to take over and base aircraft out of. Next up, we've got the train. Now, in my game, trains are actually a unit that you can purchase. So there are going to be rules, though, that basically have it so that you don't have to buy trains. Like, you can just kind of use imaginary trains, basically, kind of like in Global War 1936. But it is an option in my game, and I definitely like it. It kind of adds a sense of, you're not just buying units for war, you're also trying to manage your national kind of movement and everything. Like, places like the Ottomans or the Middle East don't have a lot of railroads, so the Ottomans are going to either have to invest or suffer the consequences of not having a good transportation system within their empire. Next up for trains, we've just got an armored train. These things have some combat value and can transport less units, but again, they do have that combat value, so that is pretty nice about them. Here we have a heavy artillery. This was made by the same person that designed the Zeppelins, and between this and a shielded model, I've got these as my heavy siege guns for all of my nations. So a very nice looking sculpt. I really like it. They are a little bit fragile sometimes, but they hold up decently. So yeah, I definitely like the hollowed out barrel there. Alright, and other than that, I think we've just got one more piece, and that is just the artillery, just standard artillery. This is a Dutch World War II gun, but I just decided, they were on the sale, the wrong color parts, so it looks like a pretty decent little World War I field gun, so I decided to use that. And yeah, so that is my land forces, and I don't have my custom infantry on me, but of the infantry I do have, we've got some cavalry. Cavalry will play a pretty big part in the game, especially early war. A lot of the land nation, or Britain actually has a decent amount of cavalry, and places like Russia and Austria-Hungary start with a lot of cavalry pieces. And then we've just got some carried over World War II infantry because I just needed some more infantry. I've got those 172 sculpts that you guys have seen in my past videos, but yeah. The OOB infantry, you know, they look the part, and they also just were saving some time and money because I didn't have to repaint any infantry. But yeah, so overall, that is my World War I British army, and I hope to see you guys again in the next video. Cobra, out.